Welcome back to the Elevated Coach podcast. I am your host, Joel Burgess. I am a leadership and business coach and the founder of the Elevated Coaching Collective, a community of heart-led coaches here to play big, make a massive impact, have a load of fun, and make a load of money on the way. Now, in these earlier episodes, I wanted to speak to those that have had the greatest impact on my life, me, and my business. So it's such a pleasure today to be speaking to a very close friend of mine, Ben Bidwell. Ben is a human potential coach and breathwork facilitator. He's guided me into some very deep and transformational spaces. And he's an amazing man, one that really lives from his heart and speaks from his heart. In this conversation, we explore just that. We explore speaking and living your truth, the power of integrating your emotions and emotional maturity and how that impacts our coaching and the spaces that we hold. We explore what makes a great coach, powerful questions, embodiment, and so much more. I'm really confident that you're going to enjoy this conversation. Ben is a beautiful soul, a man that truly inspires me, and I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. Let's get stuck in. Hey, Ben. So we have a tradition. I have a tradition on this podcast that the first question is asked by the previous host. It's a kind of an idea taken from Stephen Bartlett. Instead of the last question, it's the first question. And Alistair Gray left this question for you. And it's, what piece of wisdom or advice have you received from a mentor that has had the biggest impact on you as a coach?
Well, that's a big question to just spring on me.
I know, we don't hang about.
Biggest bit of wisdom. You know what naturally comes to me, and I'm just going to come to that. And I guess mentor, like this was probably the phrase that I heard growing up all the time. And the reason I'm sharing it with you now is because I'd had no idea what it meant for most of the time. And I get it totally wrong. Because everyone used to tell me, just go and be yourself, right? And I used to be, but if I go and be myself, then I'm gonna be a bit of a dick. Like, I'm gonna say stupid things. I'm gonna because I really had no idea what being myself was. And so I share this because probably the transformation for me has come in the sense of really, like, now I get it, being myself. But it's not as simple. You can't just go and be yourself. It takes, for me, it took a lot of work to be myself. But when I got it and I got there, or I continued to get closer to it, then just being myself in everything I do, whether it's this podcast, whether it's in my coaching, whether it's, connecting with someone as I buy coffee, just be me. Don't don't plan it, but just allow what is inside of me to be expressed. And that is myself.
Love that. Yeah. I often think these cliches are cliches for a reason, right? Because they're just true. You can't get away from them. Like, trust the process, be yourself. They are just hard truths. And what I've experienced in my life is that there's so many layers to understanding of these truths of be yourself or trust the process or whatever it might be. I want to come to you and ask you though, like, why is being yourself so hard? You mentioned that challenge. Why is it so hard?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a little bit of an example, actually, because I think this really highlights it. And it's something that I've used recently with clients, in the sense that the easy thing for me to do in life is to go through being who I've learned to be. And that is, I'm pointing to my head as I do this, right? And what I'm saying from that is that, let's say you do something that triggers me, right? Right now, you're doing whatever. And then my immediate reaction in my head that I can hear so clearly at surface levels right there, something like, Joel's being an idiot, something like that might come up. Like if it really triggered me and I was being really judgmental and I was really in that, Joel's being an idiot. And that's what's there. I can easily hear that. That's not really what is true. That's what I've learned to see and how I've learned to project. And that is the little computer in my head, like gurgling away. This equals Joel's an idiot. That's my judgment of what's happening in this situation. That's easy. I can hear that loud and clear, right? What is really true in that moment, if I go beneath that and I really get into like being myself, the truth of what's happening, it's feeling a little bit frustrated by Joel right now, or I'm feeling a little hurt by Joel right now, or Joel's showing me something that I wish I had right now. That's what's really true. But most of us just live in this place of Joel's an idiot that's just on the surface and gurgling around our head. But there's always stuff underneath that. And most of us don't get to the stuff underneath it that is who we really are. We just get to the stuff that's bouncing around in our head at surface level, that's like judging, trying to work everything out. So it's hard.
What's been that?
I want to add one bit to that, because you said, why is it hard? And then we like the cliches that we referenced a minute ago. Well, people talk about going deep, they're deep, or getting beneath the surface, or under the skin, or all that kind of stuff. And that is because, like, you're an idiot is surface level, right? That's there. But the stuff underneath it, I've got to listen beneath that. I've got to go beyond that thinking in my head to get to that. And that is under the surface. It is deeper. It does take a bit more awareness and understanding. I've got to go and really tune in to what's there and think beyond or listen beyond what's rattling around. And that's much harder. It's not as accessible. I don't hear it as loudly. So it is hard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's that journey been like for you? What's that involved? That sort of almost taking responsibility and noticing this surface level and actually going, no, that is the easier choice. I want to find out what's deeper. What does that journey look like? And what's that look like for you?
Yeah, it's another cliche, but it's one of vulnerability. It's what's easy is just to make the easy judgment. Joel's an idiot. What's hard is to look at myself and really consider what I'm feeling that's leading me to believe that Joel is an idiot. Sorry to keep coming to this. Joel is an idiot. It's just the example that came up. It's just like, I've forgotten the question now. I've totally gone away. What were we saying?
How what's your journey been going beyond the surface and actually getting to what's true?
Yeah, one of vulnerability. Yeah, because it's much more vulnerable for me to say, Joel, like that expression that you just shared, or Joel, what you just did, I'm finding like it's really like making me feel quite uneasy and have a conversation with you on that level. What's easy is just to go, Joel, you're an idiot, and to make it about you, not about me. So it's vulnerable to go in and express what is really true, my limitations that lead me to judge you in the way that I just have. And most of us will just choose the easy route of what we hear loud and clear, not what's really true underneath it all. So it's taken a long time. This is not a click your fingers. This is not like, oh, I understand this now. Of course, I'm going to listen beneath the thoughts. It takes time. This is consistency, and the brain is used to what we most consistently use. And if we're most consistently tuning into our judgments and walking around from this place of, Joel is an idiot, and coming from that place and judging everything, it's really hard. Like, some people might be listening into this going, well, I don't know what else to hear. What else is there beneath my thoughts? There isn't. If I don't listen to my thoughts, what do I say? And that's hard. It takes time, like scraping away, having experiences, listening in, until it does get a little louder, until the point that you can hear it as loudly, if not louder, than the voice in your head, the judgment. So it's been a long process, and it's been a challenging process.
Totally. I joke with my wife a while back that sometimes we actually just wish we weren't conscious and we didn't have this awareness, because it would be so much easier. I remember sitting there and I was furious at my wife, very surface level. And I was angry at her, and I was acting like a 13-year-old boy, stropping around. And it was kind of surface level easy. It kind of fulfilled a need because she was responding and reacting and sort of, like pandering to me a little bit. So I kind of satisfied a bit of immediate need. But I was sitting with it on a drive and I felt really empty, and I knew there was a deeper truth in me that needed to say sorry, and actually realize that it was my trigger, my emotions that needed to be integrated. And I did. I said sorry. And the connection that then happened beyond that was like satisfied my soul. It satisfied my heart. And I think this is it, right? It's so much easier to just go around and blaming and projecting and what have you. But it doesn't satisfy your soul. And it's so much easier. My wife, Marissa and I joking, like, wouldn't it be nice just for one day just to blame each other? And but it's not deeply fulfilling, and it doesn't satisfy your soul. So I totally hear you.
Why doesn't it satisfy your soul? I think that's the question. That's what gets me. What can you explain? Like, what was it about that satisfied your soul?
Well, there was no connection. There was no connection before that apology. It wasn't true. It wasn't true connection, and she wasn't actually giving me what I truly wanted. What I truly wanted was like heart to heart love, and that apology led to that. Does that make sense? What would you say to that? Like,
I would have even just stopped you when you just said it wasn't true. Like it wasn't true. Like, we can feel it. Like, when you the apology was really your deepest truth. The strop was this part of you that had learned, like, not to get into all the cliches, but to protect yourself and from a child and all this kind of stuff. And it's not true. And like, in my language, in your heart, what is true. And the apology was truth. And then when we live in truth, we live in alignment, we live in harmony. And when we live in judgment, we're living out of truth, out of alignment, constantly thinking. And that's tiring. Yeah. And it's not harmonious. So that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's that knowing, isn't it? You just know when it's your truth, and when you're out of congruence. There's just it's very hard to describe this sensation, but when you just know. It's a full stop, and it's like when you don't know, there's something that's just niggling away. And I think, sadly, this is how most people, this is how I lived most of my life, and still do occasionally. But I now have that awareness of when I'm living out of alignment. How does that awareness show up for you when you're out of alignment, perhaps? And
lots of ways, I guess. Physically, I can feel it, like the sensation you said. I think there's probably a sense of anxiety in me that I'm not being true to myself now. Like you said, when we're not, let's say, sort of conscious of this stuff, then you almost kind of don't feel it. You just don't know it. But when you know that you're not being you, then you feel the pain of it. So I feel it, an element of anxiety. Things become forced. I'm not relaxed. I'm not open. I'm trying. I'm forcing. It becomes heavy, draining, tiring. Yeah. Yeah. How about you? Do you feel it? Do you feel it the same way?
Yeah, very similar. I think it's force, tiring, efforting. When I feel in alignment, it's flow. It's effortless. It's relaxed. It's easeful. It's not to say it's easy in the moment. Like my truth sometimes, in the moment, it's actually very hard. It's the harder decision often, but the feeling afterwards is a feeling of aliveness, of congruence, of flow, of ease.
Yeah, that is true. And I think that's a really important point. It's not always ease. It's not always kind of flow, for sure. I guess I mean that when there's no challenges. If I'm just having a relaxing conversation, and I'm really authentically being me, then it is easy. But life isn't always gentle conversations, and sometimes there's a big part of us that doesn't want to express that what we know is true, because it's going to be challenging. It's going to perhaps upset someone. It's going to we're risking rejection or failure or embarrassment, and a part of us is like, holy shit, like, let's not go down that path. Let's just avoid it. But as you say, in those moments, truth is truth, and when we live to it, it feels better, even when it's hard at the time.
What are some of the truths you stand for?
I mean, one naturally comes to me is like truth is truth, and just so honesty, integrity. I guess, like in my language and in my coaching and the way I aim to show up always, it's like there are two truths. So there's the truth that goes on in my head, and there's the truth that goes on in my heart. And it's not to diminish the judgment. To go back to Joel's an idiot. it's not to diminish that as a lie, but it's just recognizing that it's not the deepest truth. It's like a part of me, it feels that's true. Part of me is like, that's really what it's connecting with, but it's just not the deepest part of me. It's just not the most aware part. It's my programming. So, there's truth is often, it's not black and white. It's gray and, but ultimately, I guess if I were to sum it up, I'd say truth is alignment, and it's harmony, and it's just a knowing. It's standing up for what you know to be true, showing up even when you're scared, even when you know you might embarrass yourself, even though you know you might fail. There's a truth to all of that, or underneath all of that.
Yeah. I'm curious. I describe myself as a business coach for the heart-led coaches, and knowing you very well, I could very confidently say you're a heart-led man. What do you think that means, being a heart-led person?
Yeah, thank you. I come back to the same thing, if I'm really honest with you. Like, for me, I think that the heart can often get misunderstood. When I talk about the heart, some people, I think they just mean like the nice, like emotional side of us, And I'm like, it's really not. It's a lot of what we just talked about. It's ultimately, for me, my heart is my deepest truth. It's what I know to be true inside of me, beyond my thinking. And so sometimes, like, a heart-led coach is having the really deep, honest, confronting conversations that's challenging this, letting people know they're out of line if that is what's really deeply true, outside of judgment, if it's really what we can see. So heart-led is just leaning into the truth in our heart, the truth beyond our thinking, and coming from that place and tuning in from that way. So going back to the original analogy, a heart-led coach is someone who can see beyond the judgment of Joel is an idiot. They can recognize that that's part of them that's coming up, and the heart-led coach inside of them can recognize and go, what's going on there? What's going on inside of me, inside of my heart, that's leading me to judge Joel in that way. And so the heart-led coach can tap into that place, even when the thoughts are coming up, and then can make a choice to lean into that part and have the conversation. Joel, what just happened then really, I found really difficult. And if you've got a minute, I'd love to just share why, if you're willing to hear me. No, sorry, that's what I mean. Sorry, my heart would say, right? That's So it's not actually true. I don't actually think you're an idiot, by the way.
You keep saying you do.
Well, the mind is a weird thing, But no, it's that is what a heart-led coach is for me.
Yeah. How have you developed that in your coaching? Because I think, especially Europeans, right, we tend to be people pleasers by nature, I think. I'm going to speak for a lot of men here. There is a tendency for men to be people pleasers, especially sort of from our era. I'm certainly a recovering people pleaser. And, speaking from the heart, it sometimes does create confrontation in our body. It creates the idea of confrontation. It's often not the easy thing to say, and I'm curious as to how you've developed that muscle to notice that truth and speak your truth in the context of a coaching session where it may be uncomfortable to say.
Yeah, I think at this point, when you know something to be true, it's just you have to. The beauty of the heart is that whilst it might say challenging things, it will always say it from a place of kindness and a place of love. So I always trust that if I'm delivering something challenging, if it really comes from my heart and outside of judgment, then it will still be delivered with kindness. And so I trust in that. I'll always trust that when I share that truth inside of me, it's going to be delivered in a way that is kind. And if it's not met, that way, then that's okay, because I can't control it, as long as I know that I'm delivering it from that place. So for me now, like connecting to that is I just have to express that truth. What I would say is that when I started out off this journey, I came to this reality that so many of my fears were surrounding fears of failure, rejection, embarrassment, and certainty. And so I would stop and I would look, and I'm like, is that my truth, or am I just scared of failure or embarrassment or rejection or certainty? And they so often came up for me in some capacity. And so often it's like, okay, no, it's not my truth. I'm just scared of failure, one of those ones. And so from that place, I could then go, well, what is really true? And then lean into that.
Yeah. It reminds me of a story on a retreat I went on last year, where it was a men's retreat. It was 40 men on the retreat, and Graham and Robbie, who were leading it, were explaining the sharing circle, where someone comes into the middle and shares their truth authentically. And they said, if you are thinking about what to say, it's not your turn. If you are thinking about or planning when it's your go, it's not your go. If something happens in your body, like a hot flush, or your heart starts beating, it's your go. And I remember it, and again, it was going around, it wasn't structured, it was sort of whoever felt the call, whoever felt the charge, right? So I remember thinking, what am I going to share? What am I going to share? And someone shared something, and immediately my heart started beating, boom, 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 boom. And I just got up and went in the middle, had absolutely no idea what I was going to say, no idea what was going to come out. And I, we were sort of taught to move the energy. So I did some sort of hand screaming and did some shaking. And then I just shared. Like, there was no thinking mind. There was no efforting. It was just pure, authentic expression. And that was like the moment of like, wow, that is authentic expression. That is speaking your truth. When there's no mind, there's no planning, there's no efforting. It's pure allowing. And I've experienced it a number of times since, running workshops and what have you, where it's just a full surrender. And sometimes I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to say next, or often. And it's just a breathe, a breath, and allowing. Have you got any experience? I know you've done some public speaking, and I remember one talk you gave once where you stood at the front for 5 minutes or so in total silence in front of maybe 100 or so men, just looking around in silence. And I remember being like, wow, this is powerful. But I'd love to hear some of your experience of, that authentic expression and what that feels like.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. I love that. And that's such a beautiful exercise. And it really reminds me at the beginning of my personal development journey, sitting in those circles. And, unlike what you described when it was sort of sporadically, I go back to when it was kind of one at a time, and I knew my time was coming. And I was like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? How am I going to start this? What's going to, figuring it all out. And then I remember going, I don't know, maybe a year or two later, similar kind of scene. And I'm like, I'm not going to work anything out. Like you just said, I'm going to sit, and when it comes to me, I'm going to answer in that place without any idea. And my answers were so much better at that point. They just came out. And the truth is always there. The mind is so controlling. It wants to plan everything. It wants that absolute certainty. But the truth is always inside of us. Like you said, so many times you rock up, you don't even know it, and you just let it out. So my intention is that I notice when I'm speaking, doing public speaking, when I start, there's often this need to kind of, catch the attention or say a joke or grab everyone. And for me, that's kind of a bit of a head start, which doesn't make sense, does it? But like starting from the head, because it's planned, and some people can do that really well. But for me, it's about, what if I just create silence and I just stand and I just be present and I look at everyone, and there is this vulnerability in the air. And what if I start from that place and then I express whatever is true from there? and I let my vulnerability be felt, because it is going to be a vulnerable moment. People are, and I just speak, and invariably what comes out at that point is always different, but it's like everyone's looking at me. I don't know what I'm going to say, and I don't know how this is going to go, but I want to be here with you. I'm putting myself in that position, and that's because that is what's true. And I think people feel me in that moment when I do that, rather than standing there, go, hey, I'm Ben, and this is what we're going to do. And not to make that wrong, but because my message is about this, the best thing I could possibly try and do is embody it from the word go. So yeah, I work with a public speaking coach, and I remember sort of through our work, sort of suggesting with him, saying to him, like, I feel like this is how I want to start it. What do you think? And he was like, yeah, amazing, go for it. So I kind of felt, okay, if he thinks it's okay, then I'm doing this. It was more challenging when I did it in a prison and they started shouting at me, telling me to get on with it. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But generally, It's good.
Yeah. It's I want to shift gears a little bit and explore kind of your journey into coaching and your journey as a coach and how you've developed. How long have you been a coach now?
Well, I first trained in NLP 10 years ago, but I guess I've been practicing for maybe 7 years or something like that. 6 or 7 years. Yeah.
And what would you say that the difference is in your coaching 7 years ago versus your coaching now?
Everything. So much of what we've just talked about. But yeah, going in, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, going in without a plan, some kind of structure, and you've taught me a lot of this in terms of the structure can provide the freedom, can provide the safety to relax, to express from that place. Having the courage to speak my truth and really being integrated enough to really know what my truth is. So when it is expressed, it's felt as my truth, not felt as a judgment or an attack or a thought. Trust, surrender, all the cliches, the things that have come up. I just sitting in that space. That we've spoken about it briefly recently, where it's about the space you hold. You can ask the same question. You can ask it again and again. And if you can hold a space and you can ask questions in the right kind of way, then you can get entirely different answers.
Excuse me for interrupting the show, but I wanted to ask you, have you subscribed yet? I ask because this is a brand new podcast and it will really help me out in my mission to spread coaching as far and wide as possible. I truly believe that coaching can change the world, and your simple subscription helps me out more than you realize. So thank you for your help in advance. And if you feel like this episode might help a friend out or another coach, then go ahead and share it. Thanks in advance, and let's get back into the show. Yeah, I love that. I'm actually planning a session tomorrow as part of the Embodiment course that we're doing with Mark Walsh it's a test client. He will have experienced it by the time this podcast has come out, so it's not going to ruin it. But I'm going to do 30 minutes of asking what he wants, centering, asking what he wants, centering, and see how deep we can go. I've experienced it myself prior, where it was, what do you really want? Allowing what comes up. Now, what do you really, really, really want? Allowing what comes up. And we're going to do 30 minutes of it. So I'm really excited for that tomorrow. I just want to rewind a little bit, because you said something, integrated enough. What do you mean by that? So you said, as long as I'm integrated enough that I can notice whether it's a judgment or truth. What do you mean by that?
I mean, and I don't know if this is the correct definition of integration, but for me, it's really being able to recognize what truth is and what truth isn't inside of me. So it's just deciphering what is judgment and what is deeply true. And the integration is, for me, is being able to create that separation. So having spent enough time to process and understand myself enough so that in that instant I can communicate from that place. Because I do think the journey is twofold. In the first place, you've got to understand yourself well enough to understand what is, let's say, head and heart. And then you can understand it, but then it's like, and this is why I'm really glad that we're doing the embodiment training. Like, if you like, the integration is then okay, well, like really making that natural and your way, and embodying living that way, so that when it comes to it, it just is my way. I don't have to stop and go, hang on a minute, I just need to work out what's a judgment, what's true. Give me a second. Okay. And like, you can't figure that out in that moment. The integration is like, I'm clear enough now that it's integrated enough that I just allow it.
Yeah, totally. I'm currently going through a process called the presence process with a sort of somatic therapist, and it's really given me true understanding of life. There's Tony Robbins' quote of life's happening for you, not to you. And what I'm learning from it is that whenever there's a trigger, whenever I feel something, life, the universe is gifting me an opportunity to notice what's not integrated, to then go and integrate that part of me so that the next time it happens, I'm not triggered. And I think that for me is that sort of, I'm integrated enough where I can notice what is my trigger versus intuitive read or intuitive lesson about. And I think this is one of the most challenging parts of being a coach, and it's something I spoke about with Graham and Alistair, where, because I think a lot of coaches get into coaching because we have this desire to help people, to almost save people, and actually in doing that we can sometimes take away people's power, and we can almost project our own wounding and wanting to get validation from our client. So this integration part, I think, is so crucial in becoming a really, really powerful coach, because you start to, as you say, like take responsibility. You start to notice what's actual truth, and there's no thinking involved. It's just this allowing, because you know yourself well enough. And it's also why I think it's the most challenging career, but the most fulfilling, because to become a great coach, you have to know yourself. But to truly know yourself, that is the ultimate journey, right? It's one of the hardest journeys. So it's a gift, but also like a real challenge.
I think it's really important, Joel. Because I think now in this kind of Instagram era, and the availability of this information is everywhere, and I think people are far more aware. Like honestly, when I started my journey at 30, so almost 13 years ago, I honestly had absolutely no idea that I was anything other than my thoughts. I really did. That was, and that concept was so foreign to me, like completely out the blue. Whereas now, I think generally most of us, somewhere down the line, it's everywhere, and I know I'm in an echo chamber and I see it everywhere. But I think there is far more awareness from people now of kind of mental health, and we are not our thoughts and all this kind of stuff. But the gap, or the part that's missing, is perhaps this more narcissistic era. We're hearing that word everywhere, where we think we know it, and so therefore we think we are it because we know it and we understand. And actually, and this is why I'm so happy we're doing this embodiment work. What really matters to me is the embodiment. It's not knowing it. It's what do you embody? What do you actually be? Because that's what I feel. Like, you can say the words to me, but what do I feel in you? And that's what I think is so important from what you just said. Like, can a coach show up and really be the embodiment of what he or she is helping people achieve or wanting to achieve? Can they see that? Do they feel that in you? Can you hold that space from that place?
Yeah, totally. Mark said something the other day around almost feeling an emotion is almost like the only truth, and I really landed with me. It really landed with me. I don't know what comes up as I kind of share that.
Yeah, I yes, completely, because an emotion is truth, right? But for me, what I really think is important beyond that, it's owning the emotion, so the emotion doesn't own you. So if we feel the emotion from a place of it's owning us, and we fully become, and we're lost to the emotion, then, we're in for a roller coaster, because we'll be acting out our fears and we'll be acting out everything else that's coming up. Whereas if we're able to own our emotions, so that if sadness is there, yes, we can own the fact that we are sad, but the sadness doesn't own us. And I can feel sad, but not like be the embodiment of sadness full time. I can just be that expression. Now we're really getting somewhere. I believe that we can express an emotion without being an emotion, if you like, but that requires us to own it. Do you know what I mean? Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, totally. I think the sort of what comes up for me is that awareness of the emotion. That's the first step, and it's choosing how you respond, and that's what you said. That crucial part was like I'm able to create enough space between the stimulus and the response, and that's really what makes a great coach. And how we get there is by integrating these emotions, sitting with ourselves, and understanding what's thought, what's real, what's truth, what's. But I think, just coming back to that point you made around perhaps this sort of narcissistic era was like, I know it all. I think it's, for me, it's one of the hardest parts of being a coach, where I'm going through a very deep inner process with my somatic therapist coach, where at times I don't know anything. And yesterday I was in tears for about an hour with asking, who am I? What's this all for? Completely broken. Deep shame, deep guilt, just all the emotions. And then I've got to go and hold space for people in the afternoon. and actually what's been very liberating for me is to just completely own the fact that I don't know anything. And I've communicated that. And ultimately, none of us know anything. We're just doing our best, trying to figure things out. And I think, as you say, in this Instagram era where we kind of got to sort of pretend and have this persona of we got it all figured out. When we try and live up to that, it's so much pressure. And when we're in a coaching session or delivering a workshop, it's so much pressure. It's been unbelievably liberating for me just to say sometimes, I don't know. And to really be vulnerable and open with my journey. I really don't know. I feel so lost at times. So lost. Like, who am I? What do I even want? And
it's the only way wild to be, because I just don't feel like we are living truth if we think we do know it all. It's just not possible to be free, to be liberated, if we think we do know it all. It's a red flag for me if someone does think they know it all. And that is my one thing in this. That there is, for me, there is no black and white to all of this, because everyone is different. And if there was one book, if there was a black and white journey for everyone, we're all the same, and you just got to understand this and this and this, then, great. Someone would have written a book and we all read it and everyone's done. But for someone, it's breath work. For someone else, it's meditation. For someone else, it's therapy. And for someone else, it's embodiment work. And it's, I never want to make anything better or worse than anything else, because we're all different. And you may say something that makes sense, and I may say something in the same way it doesn't make sense to someone else. And it's just that's the nature of it. We're never going to be perfect and nailed and have it all figured out for everyone, or in any capacity.
Totally, yeah. And it's why I often say to my clients, you're the best coach in the world for someone. You're also the worst coach in the world for someone. And again, when we try and pander ourselves to certain people, like it's so limiting. But when we understand that some people are going to resonate with us and others aren't, it's just totally liberating. And it comes back to that, that truth and being who you are. And I'm interested. I just want to stay on this topic a little bit longer around like what makes a great coach. What do you think makes a great coach? You've got this sort of speaking your truth and in being integrated and able to decipher what's mind, what's heart. What other qualities do you think make a great coach?
Yeah, well, I'll share what I'm working on at the moment to get better. And that's as simple as asking really good questions. It's sometimes, I don't know if you have the experience, but you watch some coaches and all they do is just ask the right questions, and everything just unravels from that place. They don't offer any wisdom, or the wisdom is within asking the right question. And I can definitely continue to ask better questions. I think we can all continue to find a way to connect with better questions. So I'm definitely, I think that's presence, asking good questions, curiosity, lack of judgment, understanding ourselves. These are all really important traits. But I think you've also shown me how important the structural side. That we've spoken a lot about just being, just the coaching bit, just sitting with someone in a one-to-one space or a one-to-group space. But, this day and age now, that's not just that. We have so many more jobs than that. And I think that's the part that I think you are so good at, understanding that we have to be beyond that as well. And we have to create the structures, and we have to have the systems in place that then allow us to do the job well, almost. And I think there are some amazing coaches out there who are struggling because they don't have that in place. And then there are probably some not so good coaches who don't have as much ability in that space, but are really flying because they do have that side. So, it's in our day and age, it's a lot more than, just being good at what you do, right? You have to be, if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to be able to do digital marketing and everything else. There's a lot of facets to this business, unfortunately.
Yeah. It asks a lot for us and from us. And just on that question piece, it's just so true. Do you have any favorite questions that it's a big question, or it's a hard one to answer, right? But do you have any favorite questions that
I'm really stuck at the moment? I'm looking at parts work, and so I'm really stuck when you're saying that. It's about helping people uncover which part of them is saying what. And so I keep coming back to that, asking the questions that allow them to see who's saying what and what roles are happening inside of the body. But I would love to listen to a better coach than me on questions, answer that, and say what questions they love to share. You would have some great questions, I'm sure. What are your favorite? Please, can we just switch and you tell me what great questions you love, so I can listen.
One of my favorite questions is just getting them to go into their body. Like, where do you feel that in your body? And it's kind of leads into parts work, but where do you feel that in your body? In my newsletter, actually, I share my sort of favorite coaching question for the week, and there's a lot in there. But simple questions like what else, just goes deeper and deeper. Whenever I share from experience, because I'm a business coach and mentor, so sometimes I share from experience, right? And I feel it is useful at times. Whenever I share from experience, my favorite question is, what do you hear as I share that? And where, do you hear that? Just, do you hear that? Or what do you hear as I say that? But actually, I experienced a coaching session recently with Stephen, who's I've had a podcast with, and he's someone who charges 6 figures to work with him, and paid a lot of money for just 90 minutes with him. And actually, if I reflect on the session, really all he did was get really present with me, create a space of opportunity and possibility, and then reflect back. He did a lot of reflecting back. What I'm hearing is this. As you say that, I'm feeling this. And sometimes it's just simply verbatim repeating what I said. And then it just allows me to go, oh, that's interesting. You say that. And it went deeper and deeper and deeper. And it just reminded me how simple, powerful coaching can be. It doesn't need to be elaborate. It can just be as simple as reflecting back what they said, or asking what else, or what do you mean by that?
It's so true. And thank you for reminding me of that. I feel like I've missed that recently, and really reflecting back. I don't know why. I was in the Maldives for a long time, so maybe I just sort of got out of the flow. But in recent sessions, I haven't been reflecting back. And yet I know, as you say, sometimes hearing someone share what they're hearing you say, we then receive it like, is that really, like, when you put it that way, which is basically what I said, but it seems very strange now, or that's not how I want to live. And yeah, it's what I just said. So I hear you.
I think for me, there's been a real thread that I've been following recently, and it's ever since I read the 17th verse of the Tao Te Ching, which is essentially a great leader is someone who people barely know exists, and they essentially, where people don't even realize that the leader helped them get to the answer. And it's really, really landed with me. And I'll be honest with, sometimes I interject far too often. This is my shadow and people pleasing and sort of maybe fixing part of me, maybe some impatience as well, and maybe some actual mentorship and wisdom. Actually, I can speed this up for them. It's a gray area when I am a coach and a mentor. But this paragraph, this verse, has really impacted me, and it's also a question how I want to be a parent. I really want to interfere with Frankie and Olive as little as possible. And it's really made me think, especially listening to Rick Rubin as well recently. He talks about touching the world lightly. And I think that's such a beautiful goal of touching the world lightly. And it's something I really respect and admire about you, actually, which is you hold this presence and the tonality and the pace you speak. It's very grounding, and it's something I've really inspired to, because I find myself speaking very fast and energized and quick, and actually less is more. And especially with coaching, silence is often the most powerful thing we can do, is just be completely silent.
It's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, dude. Yeah, obviously when the shoe is on the other foot, I'm like, I need to bring more animation. I need to look at Joel and how can I bring more energy? So it's the nature of being human, right? But I am learning that I find it hard, if I'm honest with you, because social media asks us to go boom, 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 boom. And I become inauthentic. And yes, it might get the algorithm, but I'm like, I think I probably am way better just being me and, let the algorithm be whatever it is. But I found that a challenge.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you. Beautiful. This is a big topic. I probably shouldn't be opening this can of worms, but maybe just really cover it very quickly. And I know you're very big on masculinity and healthy masculinity, and that's something you really stand for. What do you think men need currently?
Stillness, silence, to learn to listen again. They need to learn to understand themselves. They need to get out of the bubble of this. Look, I don't want to go off into it, but this capitalist world that tells them to constantly be more driven, ambitious, go for it. Because I'm just not sure that's ever going to deeply fulfill them. I'm not against that. It's important that we do. It's important we take action. It's important that we do have that part of us, but it's never going to fully complete us. And in amongst that doing, we need the stillness too. But, if we, as men, if we were to say, our friend said, what did you do last night? And, you said, oh, nothing. I just, stayed and sat in silence and just did a bit of journaling. The most common reaction, maybe not so much in our circles, maybe that we would sort of say that's beautiful, but in many circles, that's like, you okay? It's like, or just go straight into taking the piss out of them. And we need to learn to listen to the stillness inside of us beyond our thinking. That's what we need within ourselves. I think from society, I think we need more compassion. As men, we need more compassion to understand that men aren't consciously choosing to be the way that they are. The world is telling us to be a certain way that doesn't serve us. The patriarchy. When we look at what's going on in this world, men are deeply in pain. The patriarchy gives us very surface level success, but it doesn't fulfill us. And we often get told that it's, a man's world, and I hear that and I can see where that comes from, but we are in a lot of pain. And I say we, generally, I think the average man is in a lot more pain than we realise. And we need compassion.
I totally agree. Yeah. I really believe it's a crisis of meaning. And I think I was on a mastermind recently with Danny Morell, and he said something really powerful. And he said, anything that takes you out of stillness needs a very strong why. And I think if we don't have stillness, we don't connect to what's driving us. We don't connect to the fuel that's driving the action. Because we don't ask those questions. We don't listen to our body. We don't ask those questions of, why am I going for this? What is it? Why is this important to me? Why do I want this? We don't ask those bigger questions. And the more we do, the easier it is to do. And I'm saying this because I've been on that roller coaster, and I'm constantly trying to fight myself and introduce more stillness and ask those bigger questions like, what is fueling this? Because there's another quote I heard the other day, and it essentially goes something like this. We don't get burnt out by how much action we take. We get burnt out by the emotion that's fueling the action. And lots of doing in the world, lots of action, driven by competition or fear, and when we take action from that place, that leads to lack of meaning, lack of purpose, that anxiety, worry. And I think that's really what's happening with men. And I think you answered it just beautifully. Stillness is really the answer. And it's something I've actually really struggled with, because I feel so much tension in my body and around this desire to create. I have a lot of drive and ambition and this warrior energy to just do and take action and create. And I love it. And I'm amazing at it. Yeah. But I have such a deep desire to spend hours in stillness. And I'm very extreme. I'm very aware of that. It doesn't need hours. It can just be 5-10 minutes. That's part of my story and problem. But how do we navigate that tension where, I think men do have this innate desire to create, to build, to have this warrior action energy. But then on the other hand, how do we hold space for this stillness and desire to go within?
Yeah. I would love to just split that in two, if you don't mind. Because the first part, I just want to touch on that warrior part, is that the most important part of the warrior is that he knows himself. I think there's a lot of warrior men out there who are doing, taking action, like exactly how you just said, but they don't know themselves in the first place. So they're giving all of this energy to something that isn't really their value. And so the real warrior, that's where the stillness is so important. We think warrior is all about doing. Well, the real warrior starts from stillness. So the way to embrace or to step into your warrior actually can start with meditation. And just being so still, which we wouldn't think, but because then we get to know ourselves, then we get clarity on the path. Now we can show up and give everything without distraction to that path. Now that's a warrior, not someone who's like, yeah, this path, yeah, oh no, let's go here. Yeah, that's not the warrior. He's not going to get very far. So, so there's that, and then the sitting in the stillness part. How do we become okay with that? For me, it really starts with taking away the judgment of emotions. So. Which is, obviously not an easy thing to do, but if we let go of an emotion being a good thing or a bad thing, then it makes it a whole lot easier to sit with it. In this world we are taught, particularly as men, we should not be sad. So if we're sitting there and there's sadness, it's like affecting our very identity. We are, oh my God, what kind of a man am I? Sad. I'm not seeing the sadness. What will we do? We'll go and do something so that we don't feel the sadness anymore. But if we take away the judgment of sadness being bad, and we can sit in sadness, we can sit with it, and we can say to someone, I'm feeling sad, without any shame or any battle against it, and just allow for it and own it, then what is stopping us? If it's not bad, why can't we sit with it? So I do think just taking away that judgment or learning how to not judge our emotions is a really important starting place.
Yeah, I love that. I want to come to the final quickfire questions now, but if I was to kind of wrap up this conversation in really one sentence, it's about knowing oneself and finding your truth. Is there anything that you wish you said or want to say or leave with before we get to the quickfire questions?
I don't think so, Joel. I think I've really enjoyed. I love connecting with you, but I love this conversation, and I love, perhaps we've gone a little deeper into this than we have done before. So I've really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Lovely. Beautiful. So yeah, a few quick fire questions. What advice would you give to the version of Ben that just started coaching?
I just say do your work, and everything else will happen from there. Do you focus on you first and foremost.
And what would Ben 10 years from now say to you now?
Enjoy this. There's so much to enjoy and to be grateful for. Like, what an opportunity you've got. Enjoy every second of this.
Love it. And my final quickfire question I've actually already asked, which was, what is your favorite coaching question? So unless anything comes up for you now.
I failed the first time. I'm going to fail the second time. Do you know what? I'll bring a really simple way. What about this isn't just the question, it's creating the safety to allow for the question to really be answered. But I think it's got to start with, how are you? And for the client to be able to sit with that and not go, fine, thanks, and off we go, or to just never be able to get inside of them, but for them to be able to feel when you ask that they want to know. And this is a space to take your time and to really practice, because it does take some practice, answering that question to the best of your ability, to the best of the connection you can create to the emotion, and express that truth. It has to start. In fact, all of my coaching now starts with an understanding of being deeply honest, and understanding what that means, and understanding that there is the honesty of our mind and the honesty of our heart, and we're trying to get to the honesty of our heart. I like the whole, we've managed to avoid it for a while, but the whole Joel is an idiot part, or anyone is an idiot.
You had to get that in one last time, didn't you?
Yeah, well, you forgot that in the roundup, That's the most important.
Yeah, that was my one sentence. Joel is an idiot.
What I've learned from this podcast is I'm an idiot, and not much else.
Yeah, exactly. Cheers, mate. Lovely. I feel like it's a good place to end that. Well, Ben, I want to just finally finish with a massive thanks. I wanted to start this podcast with the people that have had greatest impacts on me, and you're right at the top of that list. You've cracked me open. You've taught me to feel. You've taught me to open up and slow down, and you constantly remind me of that as well, and challenge me at times. I'm super grateful for our friendship, your mentorship, you as a man and a real inspiration, and I truly see you in all your majesty. So thank you.
Oh, Joel, thank you so much. And back at you, I feel like, maybe I started this journey a little bit before you, but you quickly just went straight for the jugular, and to watch your rise has been deep inspiration for me. And when I'm always reminded of that, that we are a product of the people we hang around with, I'm always like, thank God I'm hanging around with Joel, and I'm hanging around with Lawrence and Alex, and our group, and because I think you're all making me raise my game. So incredibly grateful for you and inspired by you, and can't wait. I feel this is still the beginning of your journey. So
totally.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's going to be, we'll do another one in a few years' time and reflect back on this. So yeah, it's going to be exciting. Thanks so much, Ben.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Just stay with me for one more minute, because I have two things to share. The first is, if you're looking for support in growing your coaching business and becoming more powerful in your coaching, then go ahead and join my free community. The link is below. And then secondly, if you enjoyed today's episode, please go ahead and leave a review on whatever platform you're on. Again, this helps me out more than you know, and it's truly my mission to spread coaching as far and wide as possible, because I really believe that coaching can change the world. And your review, your subscription, your like goes so far in helping me in that mission. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next episode. I've got some amazing guest plans, so keep your eyes and your ears peeled. See you very soon.